The room for Avatar is full, but it's okay. We're gonna make do. Actually, let me just adjust this real quick. Test, test. It's a little better. All right. We'll start a little early. But, my name is Nate Jeffers, and I'm the creator of this series, new graphic novel series, D.S.R. Deep Space Rescue. It's been out for less than a year. Released last August after a really nice Kickstarter campaign. And just to give you a rundown, it is set in the future where mankind has settled all over space. And despite that settlement, there is no rescue program in place. So it's about the first group of people that start doing rescue missions. It's set in the sci-fi universe. 64 pages. It took me 4 years to finish this. Really, really awesome experience. Sharing it and having fans come back and tell me how much they enjoyed the story, the artwork, even just the make of the book itself. And for that reason, I'm extremely grateful. So I want to be able to enable other people to have an experience like this. And so that's why we're here. We're going to talk about all the things I learned so that you don't have to take 4 years to finish your first book. So what we're going to do, we're just going to break this down into sections. We're going to start with building a story, and then we're going to move on to your artwork and extra details with that, coloring, and then finally lettering and getting published and printing your book. So before we get started, who here has an idea? We're talking about building a story. Who has ideas? All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, okay, 6. That's great. You've already taken your first step then. Having an idea is the first step to creating a comic. I will say though, there are some things that can be extremely helpful, and I want to be clear. These are not set rules. These aren't rules. These are my suggestions for storytelling. If you want to have a good shot at engaging your audience and keeping your reader wanting to turn to that next page. So we're going to start with characters. So maybe you have an idea, whatever the concept is. Eventually you will have to settle on some characters. And making a character is really, really important. Your approach to this step will determine how well your book does and how popular your series will end up being. So we'll throw this out to the audience. What are some characters that come to mind that you think are iconic? Like first character that comes into your head. Iron Man. Okay. Batman. All right. Yes? Deadpool. Green Goblin.
Talking comics, we have to say Wolverine.
Wolverine. Okay. So let's take Iron Man. We'll start with Iron Man. When you think of Iron Man, what are some things that come to mind about him as a person? Like, what's his personality?
You really have to think serious.
Serious?
Super serious.
Yeah. When he needs to be, right?
A lot of guilt.
Guilt. All right. So he is guilt driven. That was part of his origin. Smart. Yes.
He's the owner of a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yes. Rich. That's the other thing too. So those things, those characteristics, when you watch one of those movies or read his comic, the seriousness will come through when things are really bad. The intelligence is a big part of his character. In fact, it's kind of the foundation of his character. Um, those those qualities you want. So if you're writing a story and you have several characters, which you will end up with, you want to make sure. So now we'll go with Wolverine. Is Wolverine like Iron Man, personality wise? A little different, right? Now, this is the fun part about writing your story. Put those two guys in a room together, and it's immediately interesting because they're different. So you have rich, playboy, genius, billionaire philanthropist, Tony Stark, and then you have fresh out of the Canadian wilderness, could rip you open any second, Wolverine. They're going to clash. There's going to be differences. But that makes for an interesting story. So if you start with good characters, you are like 70% of the way as far as writing a good story. Because what will happen is as you write your story and you put these characters in different situations, you put them at odds with each other or force them to work together, it will be interesting as long as you hang on to those character differences. So another thing we want to talk about for story is plotting. So plotting your story. What are your characters' goals? What are their challenges? And how will they get to their goals? So having a goal is really important. You don't want to make just a cool guy or a cool girl who's automatically good at everything, doesn't have a hard time with anything. Have you met someone who hasn't had a hard time with anything? No? It's very boring. And you know who comes up very often? I hate to do it. Superman. Now Superman's he's not a bad character, but if he's written in a way where he doesn't have any real challenge, you start to wonder why am I reading this, right? So give your characters challenges, something to overcome, whether it's a sickness, maybe it's an emotional challenge, maybe they just have a bad personality trait they have to get over. And actually, so again, let's go back to Iron Man Wolverine. Iron Man's bad personality trait. He can be a little arrogant, can't he? Right? And that gets him in trouble. You have Wolverine. He's got anger issues. He has trouble controlling himself. That's a big problem too, especially for a guy with adamantium claws, right? So if you can write something like that into your character, now you're building on that personality that you've come up with. Okay, so we're gonna actually we're not doing bad at all. We're great. Okay, any questions so far about character building or writing? All right, cool. So plotting. Oh wait, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just thought of it. How do you bring a character back up out of their emotional, physical status that is at a low?
Ah, okay. So if your character is struggling with something, how do you take them out of that? So that can actually be a part of your story. So let's say we have a superhero his powers are killing him. What should be his goal?
Probably to not die.
Probably not die, right? So what was that?
Get rid of his powers.
Get rid of his powers. This is already really somebody. If you want to steal this, you can. but you can see like, so if you give your character a problem, you just have to think, well, what would I do? Because I mean, it's cool to be a superhero, but you also wouldn't want to die, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty good to be alive.
Yeah. So
then you may need to introduce someone who could help him get rid of his powers.
introduce someone who can help him get rid of his powers,
Or maybe somebody that can neutralize the powers.
or somebody who can neutralize. Yeah. So now you see, this is the fun part about writing. you guys, you're literally writing a story right now, just off the top of your head, and it's already really interesting because we started with a character that had a problem and he has a goal. I want to know what happens now. Really good question though. Any other questions or thoughts? All right, cool. So now that you have your characters, you have your issues, your problems, we're going to talk about plotting. So you're almost ready to start writing your script. The plotting is a really nice way to make this easier, and this is usually where people get stuck. They have all these ideas and like I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start. So a plot, literally just take a piece of paper, write down things you want to happen. Like, oh well, there's this really cool action scene. Oh well, these two characters have an argument. Write all of those things down. Just write them as like kind of like a list. And you got this happened with my book. So actually, I have the handwritten notes right here. Oh wow, I open right to it. So this page here is my plotting page. This is for the second volume that I've already started work on. In all the major events that I want to happen are here. But you'll find you'll sit down and start doing this, and you will write way too much stuff. Happens every time. If you can do a 200-page book, good for you. But it's okay to look at this list and be like, okay, well, I'm going to cut this out, because you can save these things for later. Because you're not going to do just one book. You'll end up doing more. But a plot is a really nice way to just like map in your mind, this is what I want to happen. These are the cool things that I'm looking forward to drawing or writing. And then you won't be able to help yourself, and you will move on to the next step, which is writing your script. There's several different approaches to writing a script. I mostly follow it's almost like a screenplay. So you have the character name, you put a colon, and then you write what they're saying next to it. And if you have a descriptive scene, because we're talking comics and visuals, then I usually just do like a couple parentheses and describe, for example, dark rainy alleyway, man stumbles, trips over garbage can. So now I've written down like what I know I have to draw for that page. And that's not necessarily dialogue, but it is helpful to have that. So when you start drawing, and you can sit and you can visualize too. So as you're writing your book, you're going to be visualizing how it'll look. And so those notes are really helpful later. All right. Also, you guys noticed. So again, physical notebook. I'm not that old, but there's a reason why I did this, and the fact is that studies have been done that prove when people sit and write by hand, they're more focused and more careful about what they're writing than if you sit at a computer and type. Well, we got a question. Go ahead.
So if I am typing, my wrist doesn't hurt for the next 30 minutes.
Oh, you what? Carpal tunnel already? You play tennis? So if this is just again like this is just a suggestion. Yeah, right. I understand for a young generation, writing for a long time can be a little tough. But if you keep at it, your wrist will probably get a little bit stronger. But yeah, so physically writing your script. It might look a little weird now, and everybody types or they're on their tablets. But again, this is a really great way to focus, and it will force you to slow down too. You can type way faster than you can write by hand. Yes.
Do you feel you have more freedom when you're writing physically than typing?
I'll say yes. And I say that because sometimes you will write something and you're like, maybe that won't happen. And I did that a couple times. So I'll just like put a little box around it and a little star and say, maybe this happens. And actually, I have a really good example. So this first issue, um, it starts with it starts with a space jump, and so our main character, she's preparing to start this rescue program on her own. No one else in her life approves of this, so she's doing this by herself. And the point of the scene, well, there's two things. It was like first, I wanted to get the reader into space as soon as possible and like show something cool because Um, but then the question of what happens after this? Well, she's done something kind of reckless and dangerous, which is part of this character's. That's part of her issue. And initially, I wrote it so that she has a perfect landing. And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait, why would I do that? If this is dangerous and reckless, let's have it be dangerous and reckless. So she crashes instead. But I'd fully written both scenes. In the end, I ended up going with this one. Yes.
Which part took you the longest to?
Which part took the longest?
Yeah, like of storyboarding stuff like that.
Ooh,
Writing the script, drawing.
I'm gonna say writing the script. Yeah, yeah. Writing the script was um, a full. Actually, no. I'm gonna backpedal. I'm sorry. Artwork. It was the drawing. Drawing took the longest. So the script was about a year and a half of work, and that's from concept too. So I had to come up with the entire concept during that time period too. I'm counting, and then the rest of it was art. Um, yes.
As kind of bouncing off of that, I know that a lot of artists who work on a project over such a long period of time often feel kind of dissatisfied with their early work, like the early pages and stuff, because their art has changed so much over the course of learning and growing in your art over creating something as ambitious as a comic book. Do you have any like? Do you ever look back at the old art and think like, wow, I wish I could have done this so much better with what I know now?
All the time. All the time. Um, it's actually it's a the artist curse, and you can talk to you can talk to I just met him, forgetting his name, not Jim Lee. Oh, I'm forgetting the artist's name. There's another pro artist I spoke to in Virginia Beach, and he said the same thing. He's been working for Marvel and DC for like the last like 15 years. Um, but yeah, those feelings like they don't really go away. They'll diminish a little bit, and you'll be like, you know what? And I told myself with this a lot as I was drawing it. I'll do better next time. And none of your art's wasted. Everything's a learning experience. So those things were like, oh, I should have drawn this a little bit different. It's like, well, okay, do it next time, but don't go back, and that is a trap.
End up in a constant loop of redrawings.
Yes, and a friend of mine has been working on the same book for 9 years, and there was a day I went to him, and he had destroyed a bunch of pages. So don't perfection is not a real thing, unfortunately. We all strive for it, but we just strive to just do better. That's it. So since we're talking about art, this is a really this is something that I've been dying to share. Um, so like I said, I spent a lot of time on the artwork. Script is done. I'm starting to draw, and I'm taking my 11 by 17 paper and just got the script next to me, and I'm drawing. So that was my initial approach for the first year and a half of artwork. Or no, actually, no. Let's get this right. Year and a half, 2 years. First 2 years, I have the script next to me, and I'm drawing. This approach is stupid. It's really dumb to do that. And that might sound like kind of counterintuitive, but at the end, I realized something. that saved me a ton of time. In fact, I went from doing probably a page a week to doing about 4 pages a week, like complete pages. So I'm going to share that with you. Um, if you have $20 and a library card, you can do this. So your smart approach, you have your script, right? That you've got all written out. You're excited to start drawing. Instead of going right to your original like large pages like this, draw on tiny paper. He's got it. So we're talking about thumbnails. They're called thumbnail sketches. Take your script, sit down, draw a little square representing your page, and do a little thumbnail sketch. My thumbnail sketches, I wish I had them. I forgot to bring them. They're about this big, and it's what I intend the page to look like. So I had those, and I'd done a bunch of them, and I was looking at those and then just drawing on the big paper. Still stupid. Don't do that. Get yourself 11 by 17, just cheap paper. Throw it into throw your little thumbnail into the copier, and you're gonna enlarge it to full size. And this, like you can tell, like this used to be a really small sketch. Like it's not that great, but you can make out like people like as long as you understand it, that's great. Then
something much better to work with for the.
Yeah, and so with this approach, you take this page, and then the blank page that you want your real artwork to be on, you're gonna lay that on top, and you're gonna light box your thumbnail sketch.
So like trace it with a light under it, and then it will like make it look smoother and.
There's your comparison. So there's a thumbnail sketch, and then the final page, and you can see it follows pretty closely. There are some small differences, but making those changes is a lot easier because this page has almost nothing on it. There's almost no sketching on this. It's just a direct transfer of the sketch I already did. Actually, sorry, I keep forgetting about Instagram here. So that's it. This will save you a lot of headaches, a lot of time. You can make changes if you want. You're not going to make a mess on your pages. So again, I started doing this in about 22 pages in like 17 days is what I ended up doing. And it was like, I could have been done like 3 years ago. But now I really want to share that with you guys because this was a revelation for me. So you're going through, you have all of your finished artwork now. Maybe you've inked it, maybe not. Depends on how clean your pencils are. So at this point, you can do one of two things. You can say you're done, leave it black and white. You can do grayscale coloring, just to show shadows and light. Maybe you're going for more of a manga look, or you can do full color. So my approach to coloring, actually I'm going to pull this up here. My approach to coloring is also one that is a little bit more streamlined. And all right, so here's an example. This is actually I know this is tiny. I'm sorry, I couldn't get the projector to work, but if you guys can see that, there's a black and white. It's a character poster that I had done. So it's just the line art, which is what your comic's gonna end up looking like. But so the program I used was Clip Studio. There are a couple of other really nice ones, Procreate, Photoshop. Clip Studio is probably the most comic-centric program you can get. A lot of it is built specifically with creating comics in mind, so that's what I went with. So here's the shading layer on that same sketch. So it's purple, right? It's kind of weird. This started out as gray. So it was just dark gray, light gray is what I did. And then I shifted it towards purple. And the reason I did that is because with this, what you're going to do is throw a layer of color on top. And actually, I'm going to turn off. So you throw a layer of color on top, right? Just plain, looks really flat, not really that exciting. But that shading layer is still there, it's underneath it. And when you make it visible, now that flat color has that variation. And doing it this way, you don't have to pick all of those. You don't have to decide, oh, what color is the shade here, and then here, and then here, because you've already done that with grayscale, and you just let the two overlap with each other. So now you're saving yourself some time there too. And because you're approaching it this way, now you can mess around and add a little bit more flourish if you want. So yeah, full color pages. Actually, so here's an example here. This one's a poster. And same approach. If you see shade anywhere, it used to be grayscale, and it's just a single color layered on top. But yeah, that's another way to streamline things. Any questions about coloring or?
Have you done black and white work?
Have I done black and white work? I can never leave it black and white. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it. So so that's a really good question, and I have a reason for that. If you have the time and energy to color your book, your colors and your color choice can be really, really powerful emotionally. So you have a scene where somebody's angry. What color could your background be? Red? Red's an angry color, yes.
I mean, it could depend on what colors you associate with the character already.
Could be, yes. So there's some sets of colors that we subconsciously associate with emotions or situations. So red is often associated with anger or danger, and sometimes you'll see this in a comic, like somebody's like seriously hurt, and the whole panel is just red. It's almost like blood, right? Yeah.
In a game. Hit flash in a game.
Yeah, like the hit flash in a game. Yeah. You have a sad scene.
Blue.
Blue. Yes.
Especially rainy blue.
Yeah, right. So there's a use for color outside of just showing the world, and because you're working in comics, you can be a little bit more dynamic. And if you watch movies, and you watch it with the mindset of like, well, what kind of colors are they using in scenes? Because they put a lot of thought in that too. They actually digitally adjust colors. Yes.
So in art class, I learned that it was like better to take, well, not better, but like I learned that if you can take a primary color of your character and then use the complementary color, right? For the background, that also makes it look good.
Yes. Yeah. So you're talking about complementary colors in contrast. And actually, there are it's called a color wheel. You can get one like $5, and you just basically it's a wheel of colors. Each one has a little window. When you spin it, you can see how these colors look next to each other. But yeah, so actually, just looking at the cover here, so you have the fire at the bottom of the page, and then the sky. I could have gone, like, it is technically space. It could have been black, but a contrast to orange is a tealish blue kind of color. So that was intentional. Like it separates the two like layers of the background. Um, it's as far as emotion and color. So here we go. All right, so we'll go back to the crash because I don't want to spoil it too much. But there's a lot of red on this page, and a little pink too. But it's mostly leaning towards red, right? So you get a sense like this is actual danger. Like this is not what she wanted to be happening. Um, so yeah, if you can take advantage of using color, I highly recommend it. So yeah, actually here's another scene. Like this character just got some distressing news, and so we're leaning towards red because that might imply something, and I'm starting to spoil the book, so we're gonna move on. But yeah, so you've so far we've covered building a story, plotting it. We've talked about our little artwork hack. Um, oh, the light box thing. I should back up to that. Amazon, $12, LED light box. Super super easy. Um, we've talked about color. So now you're ready to print. And there's something really important. Um, this is not talked about enough. If you have colored your book, there is something called CMYK. So CMYK is a range of colors that can actually physically be printed. When you're working digitally, if you work digitally for your colors, most screens and programs operate on RBG. RBG, red, blue, green, has a much wider range, a vastly wider range than what can physically be printed. So if you start working with neons, say, oh, like this neon green, like this, or this really intense blue, you're gonna want to do a test print because you can send it off to the printing company, and it'll come back a muddy gray because the printer can't do this fantastic color that you put on the page. So that is a warning. You definitely want to check. And actually, in Clip Studio, you can preview how it will look printed. There's a setting that will change the colors to look how they would if they were printed out. So yes, publishing. So for my first run, I went with a publishing company called Mixam. They're really, really good, really fast. Um, they have printeries all over the world, so depending on where you are, you'll get even quicker shipping. They were also the most reasonably priced. Um, and I went with a higher quality book. This is laminate coated and then like semi-gloss on the inside. You don't have to do that. It did end up, costing me a little bit more overhead. But then that's where your Kickstarter comes in too. So even if you just have the idea, get on social media and start talking about it. Put together a Kickstarter pre-launch page, get people signing up. And you making the book, you making your story is now part of building your Kickstarter campaign because people will see you working on it and you can do little sketches and post those. So you're building buzz around your book. We ran our Kickstarter last July. We launched, and I had sort of done most of those things. I had spent some time advertising, but I got so focused on working. But we did have a successful campaign. We were looking for 3,000, and we raised 3,100, and that covered some payment for me for doing the work, and the rest, towards printing books. But you can set your goal however you want. If you feel that you want to shoot a little bit lower so that you're guaranteed to succeed, because Kickstarter it's kind of like an all or nothing. You can say, $800 or $1,000, depending on how you feel about that. So any questions? We're kind of, yes.
Print versus digital comics. That's because you mentioned about colors, especially.
Oh. Nothing beats holding a book. I don't know. It's this weird human thing. Like physically holding a book just makes it that much more enjoyable. Um, and I've had like almost all of the digital like comic reading services. Download them, never use them. I paid too, like I paid for it, and I still don't use them. And it's I need the book in my hand. There's just something special about it. Also, as a new artist, and you have your book now, and you're at shows, you can't sign a digital copy. You just can't. So like there's a lot more opportunity. Physical copies, you can do special editions, you can do sketch versions, you can sign them. Um, all of those things, like there's just so many advantages. Um, and I'm not saying don't do a digital. I do have a digital edition available, but this is where it's at. Like if you can get a physical one, like absolutely go for it. So any other questions before we wrap up here? Pretty good. All right. So the only question now is who's going to write that story about the sixth superhero? Because I really want to read it. Oh, he's doing it.
Isn't that just one guy?
Isn't that just sort of? But you can put a little twist on it. It's,
Yeah, except
instead of
to be a or an anti-hero.
yeah, and instead of a reporter, he could own a pizzeria or something, right? All right, guys. Well, um, thank you for coming, for hanging out and chatting about making comics. Hopefully, this was helpful. Um, if you guys want to pick up a physical copy of D.S.R, obviously they're right here. So they're 20 each, and I am signing them. And if you want to get the digital version, that is available on my Etsy shop for $10. And also, the posters are available too. So I have character posters of the entire cast signing these as well. And these are just 10. If you want original pages, come see me down at my table because I'm not prepared emotionally to give them up right this second. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Thank you guys again for coming, and get out there and start creating. Hey, we had like 20 people on Instagram. That's cool.
Instagram people.
All right, thanks guys.